We had no idea how huge this was. We had no idea how huge this whole show was going to be. To be honest, I've always maintained this. I was happy if the Indian community found us funny.
Yeah.
That was all I wanted.
What would you say now then to what's happening? Because obviously what the genius of Goodness Gracious Me was that it took all of the stereotypes that your community had been subjected to for years and turned them on their head, made them funny, and actually made us a little bit the butt of the joke, those people in history who had been perpetuating those horrible negative stereotypes. How do you feel now about a lot of comedies that are now reevaluating whether they were offensive at the time, whether they were right to be broadcast at the time? Because Goodness Gracious Me was pretty close to the knuckle itself sometimes. Is there any worry that maybe that's now, a few years later, being reflected on, might be seen as controversial itself?
Well, I think it was controversial when we did it because I thought we were hugely politically incorrect, but it was off the time. And I think we have to, at some point, we have to draw a line in the sand and say, let's start fresh. Let's understand what it is that we want to do. I mean, if you look at, the Going for an English sketch, what was the point of doing this sketch? The point of doing this sketch was to basically show white people how we felt when they went to an Indian restaurant in the UK. That's what that sketch is saying. But we didn't do it with a mallet over the people's heads by saying, that's a wrong thing to do, naughty, don't speak to us like that. We literally used a sense of humor to show them the behavior. And because it was done with warmth and a sense of love and unity, it made people accept it and embrace it for what it was, which is to say, this is how we feel in your place, and this is now how we want to show you. We want to show you that with love.
Yeah, because I laughed at myself going, oh my God, I could do exactly that. I go into a place that specialises in really hot food and I ask for the most mild thing, and then I and there's no bad intent. What do you feel about some of our old comedies, being a bit of a comedy queen yourself, like Fawlty Towers and all of those, that now people are asking to perhaps either be rebranded with warnings or taken off? Do you think we can appreciate some of those comedies, some of which had terrible stereotypes towards your community, towards my community, at the time? Now, how do you feel about some of them now having to have warnings or being taken off?
Do you know what? For me, because I take everything off the time that it was. Now, there's in comedy, it's very difficult to do it because like I've said, in comedy, it's done with a different sense. It's like in politics, things are done because, they literally change the world in a particular way. When we do it, it's done at a time where you don't think you're being offensive, because if you thought you were being offensive, you wouldn't make a joke of it and people wouldn't laugh and they wouldn't find it funny. So I think if we go back in time and say, oh, right, let's change. Every time he says a word that is or has a negative connotation, now let's change that. No one's going to want to watch it anyway. I think these things will fizzle out in time, and time is a great healer, and time is a great way of saying, okay, you got that wrong at that point. Now let's move forward and make sure from this point we don't offend, we don't hurt, we're not malicious with it.
I also think the audience are smart enough sometimes to know. I was talking at the start about Fawlty Towers and about how the Major, who's a ridiculous character, and he uses some horrific language in Fawlty Towers. Uses the N-word and all sorts. But I'm now laughing at him using those words. I'm not laughing. When it was first shown, I imagine people laughed at the word and the victims of that word. But now, years later, I'd like to think where maybe some of us are smart enough to look at what he said, and I'm laughing at him for saying something so utterly outrageously wrong, and how wrong it all was. So I wonder sometimes whether us audiences are more advanced than we're given credit for.
And you've hit the nail on the head there, Cristo, because that is the thing that bothers me the most. I think a lot of times people treat audiences like they're babies and like they can't make up their own minds about certain things. Yes, of course, what the Major said, now looking back on it, yes, they were wrong. Yes, they're inappropriate. But you as an audience, you can decide whether you want to watch it or not. Decide for yourself. Yeah. And if you're intelligent enough, you'll watch it and take it for the time that it was made in and know that, yes, now we certainly wouldn't accept that as a sense of humor at that point, it's the character that's that ridiculous that he would say, crap like that.
Well, he's the fool. He's the fool. He is now the fool. He is now the fool, and he's now the butt of the joke.
Shakespeare, though, you have it when the bard, wrote Othello. There's stuff in there that you'd go, hang on a minute now. Can he say that he's a dark Moor? Is that insulting to say? So how far back are you going to go? How many words are you going to change in how many plays and how many things? Let's instead learn from the past instead of attacking the past. Let's learn from it and move forward in a positive way and create new positive role models, and find a new sense of humor that everybody feels is fair and doesn't hurt people.
I love that. It's music to my ears, because you're right. We do need to learn from the past rather than perhaps immediately cancel it and then not have those important and uncomfortable conversations again.